So today I am all armored up. That's because I want to talk about armor, but not just armor in general, but a very specific part of Dark Age armor, which is the helmet. And this is something that I know have bothered a few people, and there have been a few different theories on it, but it's about open-faced helmets. And that's, if you compare what we might call a Dark Age helmet, or, light antique helmet, Viking helmet, migration era helmet, just whatever phrase you want to use there, they tend to have these open faces. I made an earlier video about how they're not quite as open as you might think, but this helmet here, which while not exactly based on any one find, but it's kind of an amalgamation of different stuff, does a decent job of displaying what we mean by an open-faced helmet. Because, my face is fairly open. I have this nose guard here, which protects some of my face, but it's very easy to, just thrust in the helmet and stuff. So it's created a few questions as people have wondered, why would people design these helmets when they do have just such an opening? It wasn't that a flaw that people were worried about. Now, as I said, there have been a few different theories explaining why. Some just that, helmets weren't that all that great because, body shots and leg shots were easier. Or Demi Cotter gave his theory that it was based around if you use a shield bind, then your openings, you don't really have an opening in the face because the shield's in the way. But I don't like that theory. I'm not very big of the shield bind theory in general. So my theory comes down to something we talked about just a little bit earlier, which is cuts and how the migration era and Roman era swords were more designed for cuts rather than thrusting. These are late Roman era swords, like the spathae, not the gladii, which were more thrusting weapons. And because this helmet, as it is designed currently, is very suited for defense against cuts and hacks, those sort of attacks. So yes, while you can thrust very easily at the open face, if you do a hacking strike or a cutting blow, something like that, it's very hard. Obviously anything down, you have the cap of the helmet, and that's not going anywhere. The cheek guards protect the sides of your face pretty strongly as well. Even coming relatively sideways, that's a fairly good protection. And especially these ones are a little bit long. So depending on the size of cheek plates, so I know some Vendel period, like the Vendel 14 helmet, cheek plates go down around the chin and throat where they're very long, whereas I think some of the cheek plates from more Anglo-Saxon finds, like the Giant Horde with all sorts of fun stuff, had smaller cheek plates. So if you do have long cheek plates like this, even upward blows get blocked with relative ease. And you also have this nice nose guard, so cuts coming directly sideways get blocked like that. And this helmet is also more of a barbarian style helmet with its very flat, smooth top. So earlier helmets, specifically like Romans' helmets, had a crest. So you have a crest that's fairly thick that runs across from front to back like that. And this exists also in some Vendel helms, like the Vendel 14 again, and a bunch of other finds I can't think of off the top of my head. The Sutton Hoo helmet has one, and part of this, people argue, is structural, that it would be part of the Spangen, as in the Spangen helm design, but that seems redundant. This flat Spangen works quite well, and then in stuff like, the Sutton Hoo helmet is just a bar of iron on the crest that goes atop the helmet itself. It's not holding the helmet together. And yeah, this works really well against cuts, because now, if a cut comes, it doesn't hit you right on the head, but it hits that crest. So these helmets, while yes, they're open face, so they do have some vulnerabilities, notably to thrusting, but against a cut or a hack, this is very good protection. So yes, that's sort of my theory on the open-faced helmets, is they were designed for the wearer of the time, which was probably, although not definitely, but probably based more on cutting and hacking than with thrusts and lunges. So if we assume that is actually how the warfare of the time was fought, that you're cutting at your opponent, then the open-faced helmet does that protection quite well. Even without the nose guard, it would do quite well, because again, cuts from the side, from below, from the top, below, the sides, all of those are being protected by the rest of the helmet. This nose guard's really mostly protecting against cuts that are coming in almost to the side, which are fairly unlikely. So even if you imagine a helmet without the nose guard, most cuts aren't hitting the nose guard. They're hitting the cheek plates, they'd be hitting the crest, they're hitting the top. So even if you have it more open-faced, where you just have the nose guard removed, so you just have the cap and the cheek plates, it's still very good protection against that sort of cutting, slicing, hacking attacks that we imagine were going on in this period more so than thrusting. So yes, you can thrust through an open-faced helmet fairly easily, but thrusts seem to be rare. Thanks for watching, and please leave comments about what you think of this theory.